What's going on all you gamers? Today we're going to be jumping back in some Helldivers 2, and this time we're going to be going over the stats, must know information on your character, armour, damage types, and just how you can get the most from the game. So if that interests you and you want to absolutely decimate your foes and bring liberty to the galaxy, then the first thing we'll be going over will be your character. So jumping over to your character, and an integral part of it is going to be your helmet, your cape and its armour. The helmet and the cape pretty much serve cosmetic purposes where you want to look the absolute best, as of course also does your armour. But the armour, because it's going to be giving your character varying stats. Your armour currently comes in 3 varying types, and that's going to be light, medium and heavy, and all of these have 3 main stats. They're going to be your armour rating, your speed and your stamina regen. This is going to be a very integral part to your build, as it can really change up your playstyle. Whether or not you choose to be tanky, or you want to be ahead of the game and not get hit by some of those enemies that are charging you because you're more manoeuvrable and able to sprint more. The light armour will give you a lower armour rating, whereas you'll be able to have higher speed and nice stamina regen. Medium armour pretty much is a well-rounded build, giving you a balance of all stats, and the heavy armour, as you would expect, has more armour, less speed and less stamina, so may take a bit of getting used to. Now please be aware they are waiting for a patch currently in game because the armour is a little bit bugged at the moment, and all 3 of these seem to be giving near enough exactly the same armour rating, so a lot of people will currently be probably running that light armour because you'll get the most efficiency out of it. However, the great thing about your armour that you should always take into account is that it also comes with passive abilities. Currently on these there's going to be 7 in total, but obviously as the game carries on you're probably going to get more added to that. However, at the moment we have Democracy Protects, where you get 50% less chance of getting killed by lethal damage and prevents bleeding from chest hemorrhages. Extra Padding is going to increase your armour rating. Be aware this doesn't actually show up on your stats page, it's just added on top of whatever that stat shows. Engineering Kit reduces recoil whilst crouching or laying down by 30% and increases your grenade capacity by 2. Fortified is going to reduce recoil while crouching or laying down by 30%, whilst granting 50% resistance to explosions. With Scat, markers placed on maps scan the area every 2 seconds and reduce enemies detection by 30%. Going over to Servo Assisted, and increase grenade throwing range by 30% and adds 50% bonus to limb health. And finally, Medkit increases stim capacity by 2 and increases their duration by 2 seconds, giving you a nice amount of survivability and tankiness. Personally, Medkit and Engineering Kit are currently my top choices, as they work just amazing in pretty much every mission. But pick which one you think works with your playstyle, and all of them definitely have their place. Next up, we're going to be tackling damage types, but before that I wanted to go over a little bit to do with armour piercing. When you go over to your weapon selections, most of these are going to show some form of armour piercing on them, whether it be light, medium, or if you were very lucky, maybe heavy in the future. And this pretty much shows you what level of enemy the gun's able to tackle and take down. Some weapons, because of their high fire rate, such as the Breaker, are absolutely amazing at the moment and probably some of the most powerful things in the game, but even those won't be strong enough to tackle everything, so strategy is often key. But if I show you a little bit of footage where we're tackling a charger, you can see we're going to be taking pop shots at it from a little bit of a distance, and we're not really going to be taking down much of its health. Chargers and a few other enemies in this have very heavy armour. As you can see here, when we're shooting it, if it starts to come up with this symbol looking like a shield and a ricochet coming off it, that means your bullets are pretty much ineffective, and instead they're going to be bouncing off of the armour. At this point you're going to need to find a weak spot, you're going to need to find another way to damage it, otherwise you're going to have a very bad day, and these will make your life a whole bunch harder. Each enemy has certain areas that you're able to tackle them with or break off pieces of armour in order to get to their fleshy parts, and once that's done, even shooting them in the leg works absolutely amazing to take them down. Jumping over to fire damage, and I found that this has medium to high concentrated damage, so for example if you're calling in a support weapon using a flamer on enemies, you're going to be doing a nice amount of damage, and it's going to go through pretty much everything. However, it has very low damage over time, so if you're calling in your fire based Eagle Strike, this doesn't do quite as much initial damage as most of the others, and at later levels when it sets things alight, the damage over time seems to be a little bit on the low side, so it's more to dwindle down your enemies than it is to absolutely decimate them. Definitely a fun thing to play around with, but you do need to be careful, because especially when they're getting close to you, if you're hitting things with fire or you're running through fire yourself, it seems to do more damage to us than it does to the enemy. So if you are on fire at any point, make sure you use a stim in order to put that out, or you're just going to be another lost martyr to the cause. Over to your electric or your lightning, this, most times from what I can tell, seems to be a multi-target kind of purpose for your weapons and such, and it does arc damage between enemies in range. When you're using it on your weapons, you're going to charge it up, it's going to hit the first one, and if there's a few around it, it's also going to be able to arc straight onto those and do a bit of additional damage. However, most times this is kind of small to medium damage, and you definitely won't want to be trying to tackle some of the biggest enemies with this because it won't be taking them down anytime soon. From what I would say is one of the weaker types of damage over to one of the strongest, and that's going to be your explosive damage. This, from what I can gather, usually, like you'd think, it tends to have a small radius of damage because it is explosive, but the main thing that comes with this is going to be 100% weak spot and fleshy area damage. If you're after taking down some of the toughest bads in the galaxy and you're able to hit their weak spots, then explosive is going to be the way forward. This absolutely decimates anyone as long as you've got some good accuracy about yourself, you've got some great aim going on, and you're able to hit their vital parts, then explosive is going to be the way to go. Jumping over to the laser, and this one is a lot of fun to see as it brings a continuous single target damage beam. You're going to be able to focus fire on one enemy, try to take them down. It's usually able to be held in place for a long period of time, so it's great for tackling single foes. As long as you've got some nice accuracy and you can hit their weak spots, you can focus fire this and take enemies down with some really nice intensified medium damage. Currently, however, laser weaponry seems to fall off a little bit at the later stages of the game, such as the endgame content, with the best options available probably being the orbital laser as well as the guard dog rover, enabling you to take out smaller to medium enemies, often without too much armour involved. Next up, and we're going to be going over Corrosive Gas. This one is more of an area effect base from what I can tell. You're going to try and get an AoE of gas on as many enemies as possible, but you want them to be stand within that area. I've seen this take out quite a few enemies, especially on those defense missions, and it can also help to dwindle down smaller or medium targets' health if you want to take them out easy afterwards. The only downside with Corrosive Gas, if they walk out of it, then you're not really going to be getting the full benefit, and you may as well be using something that can dwindle their health a lot easier. Now lastly, we're going to be taking a look at Electromagnetic Damage, also known as EMS in Helldivers 2. This can actually be a really beneficial thing to have on one of your teammates, as even though it doesn't dish out any damage, it's pretty much the best crowd control thing in the game. You're going to put down a zone of electromagnetic energy, and it's going to stop small and medium enemies in place. I've also found it does kind of stagger for a moment some of the larger enemies such as the Boil Titans, but it's definitely not designed for them because it doesn't make them stop for long. But if you're after a bit of crowd control, this is the best way forward, and again it can be amazing if one person on your team has this on a mortar or an orbital strike just to give you a bit of leeway and allow your team to mop up some of the enemies. Right, so that's pretty much all the damage types done, but I'm going to go over something else that's well worth knowing, and that's going to be your limb damage. As you're playing through the game, at certain times you might get hit by tough enemies or tough attacks, and you see that your character has got some kind of a red pop up above their stamina bar. This is going to mean you've taken damage to one of your character's body parts. If it shows your leg, it means that you've got a broken leg and you're probably going to be limping and moving slower. If it's your arm, you're reloading and your accuracy is going to be worse. And your chest means that you've been hemorrhaging and you're going to be losing health over time. Now all of these are very deficit and will make you fall over fast. To fix them, you're just going to want to use a stim pack and it will bring you back to perfect health. Most times this will be after a big hit, so you'll do this without even thinking, but sometimes it may be something you want to look out for so that you're not in trouble, especially in a group of enemies. Right, hopefully that's helped a few of you fellow Helldivers out. There'll be a lot more content on the way from me. We've got a lot more to do to bring liberty to the galaxy. As always, for all things gaming, take care. I'll see you all on the next day.